Our guest today is my brother and friend John Belton, a respected Masonic scholar and author. We met for the very first time in Edinburgh in 2007 at the first edition of the International Conference of the History of Freemasonry. Many thanks, John, for granting me this interview. I'm honored. Thank you.
My pleasure.
John was initiated in 1980 and currently is also member of the Quator Coronati Lodge of Research 2076, United Knowledge of England. By education, he was a microbiologist. By profession, a marketer and exporter working for a major multinational pharma company. John has recently moved to Scotland to be near his family. Early research interests focused on the post 1947 decline of Masonic membership across the English-speaking world, leading to many papers and the book The English Masonic Union of 1813, A Tale Ancient Modern, and other books. His latest book is Exploring the Vault, Masonic Higher Degrees, 1730-18,000, written together with another Masonic scholar, a French professor, Roger Dachet. Roger has been president of the Institut Masonique de France since its founding in 2002. He is also member of the scientific committee of the Museum of Freemasonry in Paris and a contributing member of the Scottish Rite Research Society in Washington, D.C. Since 1992, he has directed the Masonic research journal Renaissance Traditionnelle. He is author of about 30 books. But let's come back to the vault. My dear John, why is the book called Exploring the Vault?
We take the view, I think, that it was the third degree and the publication of Masonry Dissected. Suddenly, it was very popular in edition after edition, and in it, for the first time, everyone could see that Hiram was slain and the word was lost. What better invitation is there to a Freemason than to try and find the word that was lost? And in that, we start to get stories about rebuilding the temple and about people digging around with spades and picks in the rubble and finding stones they can lift and vaults that they can go into. And things were found in the vaults, and there are pillars. So whichever way you turn, the story revolves around the Temple of Solomon, its destruction, its rebuilding, and what is found underneath it. And that, in many ways, is symbolic of the exploration that the minds of those early Masons took. I think that's the reason, really.
You know, I was interested to see that the book was co-authored with a French brother, Roger Dachet. So what was it that made that two of you decide to get together?
It was actually my ignorance about France. I'm English, so
I know.
when I grew up, what my mother taught me was the history of England. She didn't teach me the history of France. And when I became a Mason, equally well, it was forbidden, really, to consider even thinking about the Grand Orient de France. So my knowledge was not particularly good. I had a bit, yes, but not much. And I think it was clear to me that in the last century, the research on the early development of the higher degrees was poor, was repetitive, and didn't answer any of the questions. And it's quite clear that some of those answers would be in France. This is why I needed someone like Roger Dachet. We could communicate in English or French, and he had a very good grasp of what his mother taught him about France and what his proposer into Freemasonry presumably taught him about French Freemasonry. And we thought that there had to be something more to be found, but we didn't know where we could find it. We didn't know what it would be that we could find. But if we were going to find it and make a good story, it needed the two of us. and we spent 4 years of our life doing this.
Oh.
4 years. That's 5% of my total life so far. That makes it a big project by anyone's standards. And so that's what we embarked upon. We didn't know it was going to be that big. Um, Here we have a program called Grand Designs where people want to build themselves very big houses, and they start with a little idea and it gets very big and very expensive and consumes all their time. This project was like that, but it was exciting.
Your research for the book needed to be both holistic and forensic. Please, can you explain why and what you hope to achieve doing this?
Well, we didn't know what we were going to find, and that's why we thought that past researchers over the previous century had failed. They'd failed to find any really good answers. So we need to look more broadly. So we didn't look just at England. We just didn't look at the British Isles. We looked, quite frankly, we looked at England, Ireland, Scotland, France, and we also looked quite a lot at Germany and at the Netherlands, just to see what there was to find. And we found a lot. And the other thing is we realized that information, the story is not going to be handed to you on a plate. You'll have to look for it. So you imagine these scenes where there's a murder scene and the police are looking through a woodland for clues. And there's a line of policemen and they're going through with sticks, poking away to see what they can find. That's what we did with the evidence, the printed evidence we found. So that's the forensic bit of it. So we looked wide and we looked in depth. Well, we must have been insane to even think we could do it, but there we are. That's what we set out to do. Holistic and forensic.
Yeah. What are the main discoveries you made?
Very often we didn't necessarily discover something, but we saw the relevance and the importance. But I think if you look just inside the cover of the book, and there are exploring the vault, and there is a cover of around 1490. It's a wood carving of the Temple of Solomon. So we thought if we followed various people of the Union French Lodge number 98, as it became to be called. Now, the people like John Custos and Philippe de la Thiers, and they all were all members of this lodge, and one by one, they went out. There was a celebrity chef, went to the Netherlands, a jeweler went to France and to Portugal, and a diplomat, well, two diplomats went to Frankfurt, and a man who was an artist who did stage scenery went to Berlin. En route via other places, they were all professionals. They all took Freemasonry out into Europe. And mostly it was the craft degrees, but not only the craft degrees. Also went into the Berlin Union. The Ecoswad degree went out from London to Berlin. We don't know quite exactly what went. We have to guess at that a little bit. But this one lodge seemed to be united in a purpose to spread Freemasonry through Europe. Other people had spotted individual people, but we put them all together, and that suddenly a picture appears that no one had seen. And we discovered many other things. If you look at Freemasonry, Masonry Dissected is only really, it's about the questions and answers. The candidate gets the degree and he's brought back in, and the explanation is given to him in a catechism in question and answer. But there was more than this. There was a start to just look to discover what the ethics and morality of Freemasonry was. And the first example of that we can see in terms of material that appeared in the ritual was the bit about the charge after initiation, and it deals with the duties you owe to God, your neighbor, and yourself. That is still in the English and Scottish ritual today, and I believe it's in the ritual of other places as well. People had noticed it, but no one had realized that this was the first bit of ritual that tried to teach the candidate upon his initiation what the morals and ethics of Freemasonry were. And it's something that was carried on. It was carried on by uh, Ramsay, carried on by de Latius in his expansion on Anderson's Constitution. So people were exploring this, but they were exploring other things as well. And if you read through the book, they drop up one after the other.
You told me that one of the purposes of your latest book is to open the mind of the reader to new possibilities for research, one not just to requote the book on their desk. Please comment.
Yes, we started on a very big project, and as anyone goes through such a project, you pick up on a fact here and a fact there, and then you put two facts together, and the process develops rather in that sort of way. What we could do is we found one or two. We, for example, we can tell you now that the Discourse de Ramsay of 1736-1737 was put in print in 1738 in a much altered form. We can tell you it wasn't Ramsay who altered it; it was someone else, a guy called Uriel. And we've looked at the passing of the chair degree, and we can explain a lot more about that. In terms of the degree, for example, of the Chevalier de Saint-André that went with the Écossais degrees, we can tell you who wrote the words, and the very day he announced that to the Union Lodge in Berlin, they give you the date when they did a practice and a date when they did it for real at the next St. Andrew's Day installation. And having found that, suddenly I realized that someone else had looked at a later document and found the amendment in which the form is not three taps of the sword on the back, but five. And there are clear indications from the other words that they'd been influenced by Ramsay. So you can see how the ideas were flowing through Europe, and it blows your mind. We can do it sometimes to the day, almost 300 years ago. You wouldn't think there would be that information available, but you have to look and you have to read, and it's tough on the eyes and hard on the printing. So it goes on, and we discovered that you needed to look at different editions. So there was a series called the in France 1744 the Catechism. I forget the exact word, and when it came to the third degree, it had a picture of a coffin, and across the coffin was the word Jehovah. And then he did a third edition, and we've got that, and it's got the same picture of the coffin of the third degree. It's not Jehovah. It uses MB. And there is a statement that the word Jehovah is not the word anymore. It's now just in the third degree. It's just it's the name of God. That's all. And that's the point at which we can tell you that Jehovah became the Écossais password. And that's why it partly vanishes from the third degree. But you keep on going, you keep on exploring, you will keep on finding. What we couldn't do, what we didn't do, we didn't find all the clues to connect all the things. We connect maybe three or four things, and the rest is left to other people because there are plenty more documents to go at. So we're trying to teach people to think in a different way. It's no good. The old habit of merely printing big volumes full of rituals doesn't work because you just get big, thick books full of rituals. It's only when you start to look at version one, version two, version three, look at how it changes over time, that you start to see differences. And that again, this is the sort of the forensic approach, looking at the detail. If we found things, we're sure that there are more things that other people can find as well.
One of the chapters of your book is about letter G and the widow's son. Please explain to our audience and readers about this topic.
Yes, in England, they wanted to get rid of. They don't like women, or they didn't. So Ruth has vanished from English Masonic ritual. The Queen of Sheba has vanished from Masonic ritual, and so has the wife, or depends where you look, the mother of Hiram, the one who was slain, have also vanished. But it still remains. It says in the United States and in Europe, people go, "Oh Lord, my God, oh Lord, my God," and they bring their hands down. Is there no help for the widow's son?
Mm-hmm.
We managed to dig out a bit about that, and it makes a fascinating story. And with this whole chapter, and we follow it right the way through to what they did after Hiram was killed. Um, England, 1760, it went for retribution. It went for the killing of the guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But in other places, it wasn't like that. It was different. Um, and there was one, it's called the Écossais or Écossois Maître Anglois. So the English masters is supposed to have come from England through French prisoners of war into France, and it tells the story about how after Hiram was killed, Solomon gave the a village called Gaboan to Hiram's wife to live in, and she decided she was going to care for the Masons. So, is there no help for the widow's son? It was the widow who gave help to Masons, and that's you'll start to see where that story comes from. So there are different tales after the third degree of retribution or of healing, and uh, it's absolutely fascinating. If you go to Russlin Chapel, and I did recently, and I was given a lecture because we filled the church, or everyone who was there. And at the end, he got his light flashlight and he pointed it up at one of the top corners of the back of the chapel, and he said, "There is the face of the master who went abroad and left the apprentice to carve the pillar that you can see at the other end of the chapel." And then he pointed his torch across to the other side, and he said, "And that is the apprentice, the one who got killed afterwards when the master came back. And next to him is his mother." And interesting, almost the same story is appearing at the time of the carving and the building of Rosslyn Chapel, as comes up in Freemasonry later. It might be pure chance, I don't know, but there are exciting things to be found, and that, for example, is one of them. You know, because we've been together. We went to the temple at Torficum, which
Mm-hmm.
was the home of the Knights of St. John.
Yes, exactly.
Uh, but while the idea was in reality, they were there. that was a long time before. So in 1200, when they got thrown out of the Middle East, and they clung on. But around the time of the Masonic Templars, there was a lot of interest in the Knights Templars in society. So you can look at newspapers, and newspapers were publishing articles about the Knights Templar. So Rosslyn Chapel, I don't know. A lot of these stories, the myths, the legends, I think we can see are very, very old. If you look at the old charges, you can see that they're old. How they're connected together, I don't know. But going to somewhere like Rosslyn Chapel makes you ask a lot of questions. And it's interesting when you look at all the different degrees and how they all came together. I ended up rewriting Irish Masonic history
Wow.
because they never quite came to terms with the fact that there was an early grand encampment that was going uh, late 1760s, early 1770s, and there was a split in 1779 when another group got a warrant from Mother Kilwinning in Scotland, and it was to be the High Knights Templar of Ireland, Kilwinning Lodge, and to work this in Ireland. And if you look at one particular book of constitutions, it lists all the officers of the Grand Lodge. Then it lists the officers of um, both of the Knights Templar encampments. Now it's never been as openly acknowledged as that, and it happens that the Kilwinning Grand Encampment had the Knight Red Cross, and it's the chief man was also the Grand Master Mason of the Grand Lodge of Ireland at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just there were various other degrees. So I've discovered that the two encampments competed with each other, and I think there were behind that various other degrees, like the Knight of the Sword, Knight of the East, now it's added in Knight of the East and West, that were
Mm-hmm.
also
Mm-hmm.
included as part of that, and they were different. They were different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think there's a lot more to be discovered, and I think we've made the clear discovery that the form of Knight Masons that mainly went to England was taken by an Irish lodge and is the particular version of the Kilwinning Grand Encampment, because we found a copy in one of Dunkley's rituals. This is Joseph Wages has found this believe it or not, copied and in the Masonic Library in Sweden in an
Hmm.
English transcript. Yes. So I can put that together with a Night Red Cross ritual that Professor Jan Snook has found, and today's Irish Night Masons ritual. And there is a common thread runs through all of them. So you start to see when I write the chapters on Royal Arch and Knights Templar. The first one is the Royal Arch in Ireland, And then, because lots of Masons wanted to become Knights Templar, they had to get the Royal Arch degree first. They couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
The Royal Arch took up a simple thing. They said, we're having the Royal Arch. They took it into made it part of their early Grand Encampment in a formal way. And they competed in the press for people to go along and join them. But both parts at the same time, all on St. John's, they had a big feast. Each of them had a big feast every St. John's Day, and they wanted to attract people. I found 70 advertisements from the pair of them. It wasn't just on an occasion. So the Irish are coming to terms with this. Then the second chapter is the arrival of the Knights Templar in Ireland and how they competed. And then I go on, secondly, to look at how it transferred to Scotland. And finally, and only finally, it got into England. And these things, while some of them might have started in England, the control that the Grand Lodge of England tried to exert made it very difficult for them to succeed. In Ireland, lodges worked whatever they wanted to work. Grand Lodge didn't like it, but they couldn't stop it. In England, they could stop it, and they did. So it made the progress in England harder and more difficult. So there is a lot more to be discovered, but we didn't rely upon rituals. We did use rituals, and they are useful on occasion, but they don't of themselves solve the problem. You have to put the context around them, the time, place, the people, and it's amazing how much information on time and people is still available.
Mm-hmm.
And
Understand.
we deal quite a lot with what was going on in Frankfurt. And it was a lot of it was in the early 1740s, and it was all to do with the coronation of Charles the Seventh, the big monarch of Europe. So we've started round the beginnings of a new way of looking at it, of ferreting around, as we're told the people did when they were repairing the temple and looking for things, by scraping away. And we think we're able to offer people a new way of looking at the problem and making new discoveries and starting to put together some common sense and getting stories that are different. So that's what we've done, and it was 4 years' work.
Any final words to add, my dear brother John?
No, except to wish those who follow me happy exploring. And we have to be a lot more precise. And it's no good just quoting what was quoted before. We looked in, if you read Fifield Dasseny, and he's talking in Ireland, he published a book in which he looks at the arrival of the Royal Arch in Dublin, and he says that you must be through the chair, past the chair, to get this degree, and that brothers should be patient, and it was obvious that there was a lot of pressure, even very quickly in around 1744, for people to get the Royal Arch degree. There's a hunger amongst human beings to have, brother, just one more degree. And then when I went and looked at Lawrence Dermott's 1756, his first constitution for the ancients. And he does talk about the Royal Arch because he made it part of his marketing strategy, for want of a better word. And he said that it is the heart, root, and marrow of Freemasonry. I think that's the right order. And that is what people quote. They were too idle to read to the bottom of the paragraph, because in the bottom of the paragraph, even in 1756, and remember he only started there 1751, so in 5 years, he'd reached a position where he had to say at the end of this paragraph that no one else seems to have read to the end of. And I have to remind those reading this that the Royal Arch is a degree for those who have passed the chair. And I can do no better than quote Fifield Dassigny in his statement of 1744, and he goes on to repeat it. So we know that Lawrence Dermot went over to England, and the Royal Arch was popular, and a lot of people wanted it because the only thing he can revert to justify his claim for this is that Dassigny says it. No one else had read that. Hundreds of people must have picked up the 1756 Constitution, read the words, and not appreciated what was in the bottom of that paragraph, because it tells you immediately about the way in which the Royal Arch was accepted and welcomed, wanted, back in the 1750s in England.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there we are. But you have to read, and I wish people happy reading.
Thank you so much, John.
Okay, it's my pleasure.